You who don't know me, it's being recorded. So you should know this meeting is being recorded. So only say what you want preserved for posterity forever and ever. I'm Stephanie Thomas. I'm state representative of the 143rd District, which includes parts of Norwalk, parts of Wilton, and a tiny piece of Westport. I think this group is small enough. Joseph and Denise, I don't know if people have questions, should they just pop it in the chat and we'll either answer it then and circle back?
That sounds
good.
Yeah. That's
perfect. We'll also do introductions a little later, I think, before the Q&A, but feel free if you want in the chat to put your name and business, or if you have any burning questions you want to definitely get answered. Many of you may already know, so I come from a small business background. I spent my first few jobs working for really huge nonprofits, the Red Cross and United Negro College Fund. And then I went to a small business where I was thinking this morning, I literally sat on a crate and my phone was on a stack of phone books. Like, it was a really small business. And I would do my work there every day until I eventually got upgraded and I could share a desk with somebody. And it was very small, but it eventually grew into, we had about 25 employees. And then in 2013, I opened my own consulting business. Welcome, Jennifer. I'm glad you made it back. So I opened my own consulting business, and like anyone who has run a small business, it keeps you running in many different ways. And obviously, when the pandemic hit, it hit everyone differently, but it hit everyone in some way. And that really was the impetus for me to, one, I sent out a constituent, usually I send out a constituent survey, but I decided to do a survey to the business owners in my district because I was just hearing stories and I was serving on the Commerce Committee in the legislature, and I wanted to get a sense, I wanted to hear straight from the horse's mouth, like what was going on, like were people thriving? Were they doing horrible? What kind of assistance did they need? And I threw out a laundry list of questions, and I was really surprised that what came back was, more information about becoming certified as a woman-owned or minority-owned small business, social media help. That did not surprise me. And like social media marketing, and also if there were any grant programs out there that perhaps business owners did not know about, especially given the backdrop of COVID. So I'm so glad you joined me. We had about 150 responses, which was not bad. And that's why I'm doing these particular topics, because they are the ones that most people had questions about. And of course, most business owners, like, they all blew me off and they said, okay, we can't make it that time, but so I'm glad you could make it. So if you're like me, I was thinking about who can help me co-host this. And I had just heard a lecture by Connecticut Small Business Development Center. And I had never known they existed, but they were the first group that came to mind for this today's event and Thursday's event on social media. So if you don't know, the Connecticut Small Business Development Center has a staff of 19 advisors who offer no cost, confidential, and expert business advice to small business owners and entrepreneurs. By a show of hands, how many of you knew about SBDC? Okay, Lindsay, cutting edge, great. I'm gonna start following you around. But yeah, it came as news to me, but they help groups do anything from business planning, helping experienced business owners pivot their business, really just about any type of advice, strategic and otherwise, that will help keep you on track. So I was excited to have Joseph and Denise join me. I'll let them say a little bit about themselves. I'm going to read from their bios, but I hate reading from bios, so I'll keep it short. But Joseph, he is termed a master of strategic planning, communication, and business development. So I know he will have a lot to say, and I think I'll call him offline. And Denise has over 35 years of economic development and financial services experience, working with entrepreneurs and small businesses, mainly in the Hartford region, but also at the U.S. Department of Commerce in Middletown. And she helps work on capital positions, expanding workforce capacity, and expanding marketing. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to them. Feel free to tell us more about yourselves as relevant. And after your presentation, we'll open it up for Q&A. And again, feel free to use the chat as we go, or just raise your hand since we have a nice intimate group. I turn it over.
Thank you so much, Ms. Thomas. I really appreciate the opportunity. Joe, do you want to go first and introduce yourself, and then I'll introduce myself and begin the presentation?
Yeah, that's fine. My name is Joe Williams. I'm the Capital Access Team Lead and also a business advisor in the Connecticut Small Business Development Center.
And I'm Denise Whitford. I'm also a business advisor. I'm a certified global business professional, and I lead the capital acquisition team. And so a lot of what I do has to do with procurement and some of the opportunities that we look at as we help women and minority and veteran-owned businesses. And so I wanted to take the opportunity before we launch into the process, just to give a real brief overview, and that assistance, as Ms. Thomas indicated, is to help businesses get started and grow. And specifically today, we want to look at the services that you might be looking into in local, state, and federal entities as either a government agency or even looking at large prime contracts or subcontracts. And a lot of the counseling that is involved here really looks at understanding and navigating that bid process, understanding what the purchasing regulations might be, any kind of discretionary funding that might be there helping you find that, or the different agencies, what products they're looking for or services, and do you offer something that they might be interested in? And then we'll take that little quick journey through what the requirements are to get prepared, and then analyzing those bid processes. And then Joe's going to talk a little bit more about some of the funding and bonding and other things like that. So Lisa, if we could please go to the first slide that talks about the 6 steps, that would be great. So what I want to say is, regardless of where you are in the procurement process, we really want to help you identify and prioritize your action steps and really hold you accountable to get them completed. But we work step in hand with you each part of the way. We'll help you evaluate your current capacity. A lot of folks don't know if they have capacity in terms of their inventory, their knowledge, or their access to capital. One of the most interesting things that happens a lot of times when folks are trying to do business with the government or become certified as a designated type of business, small or veteran or minority or woman owned, is they don't know the requirements that are there in terms of what kind of inventory they need to have. And suddenly they go from selling 100 items to 1,000 items, and they can't get their supply chain. So we work with you to figure that out. So as you see here, on this preliminary page, it's really getting you evaluated and planning, going through that registration process and preparing how to not just pursue the bids, but achieving success in that area. And we look at areas like working with the Women's Business Center is a great SBA partner of ours, or our partner at the Procurement and Technical Assistance Center. You may have heard of PTAC. We partner with them quite a bit, whether it's working with the state at DAS, or it's getting you through those contracts in the SAM system. So if we can go to the next slide, Lisa, that would be great. The first step, again, is going to be to evaluate. When you understand what your business is, really good information about what your products and services are, how do you articulate that verbally and in writing? We help you easily understand what agencies are going to be buying from you and what they might need, and then determining if that product or service looks good in terms of a current bid. And then we'll go in there and look at the bid matches. Sometimes getting into the system and looking backwards and seeing what the bids looked like on prior products or services that were offered gives you an idea on how you can position your business moving forward. Those product qualifications are really important. And we help you focus in those market areas to get the highest degree of success. And so it could be a municipality, it could be the state or a federal entity. Many folks don't think about it in terms of public utilities, but they also publish their bids there. Public institutions like colleges, universities, hospitals could also be there. And again, we think about that in terms of a prime contractor, but also in terms of subprime. Lisa, if we could go to the next slide. And if we think about planning, looking at the second action step here, there's got to be some kind of marketing strategy to really think about who your target audience is going to be. And that's in private industry. We start looking at demographic information. Well, government agencies don't necessarily publish their own demographic information, but we've got to think about what kinds of things they're going to be looking at. And we take a deeper dive into the market and industry research, as well as their procurement histories, to see what kinds, again, of materials and services there are, but how they purchase. Sometimes they purchase in small increments where they can purchase anything from $100 to $2,500 on a pro card, which is very similar to a credit card. And other times there's processes that are in place to simplify that threshold. So if they're going to purchase between $2,500 and $10,000, it's a different process than when they go into a sealed bid or a contract negotiation. And we help work through that process with you and helping you go through the GSA and other types of agencies to figure that out, what they're doing, how they're doing it, and how they reach you. And then if we move into the registration slide, Lisa, if we could move to the next one, that step is where we really start thinking about all the documentation and helping you through that process. And I've listed a few of those things here. Having a Dun & Bradstreet number to get yourself registered is going to be really important. If you're working through the SAM system, you're also going to want to make sure that you have your cage code, depending upon what the product is. If you're manufacturing something, or again, you're providing a service, those numbers are going to be different. And that system has been streamlined. We have in here a thought process of BizNet. The state of Connecticut has changed that name, but we start getting you through that registration and other government agency registrations. That's not an easy process. And a lot of times some folks get nervous about it. The good news is all those databases where you have to enter data into now have a save and come back later button. In a few years ago, they didn't have that button. And so you had to have everything in front of you and it felt like you always had to start over, but it's been streamlined and simplified quite a bit. Lisa, if we could go to the next slide. So some of the certifications are on this slide, and I wanted to take a moment here, and I'll share the floor with my colleague, Joe, as well. Our advisors would work with you to think about and talk about what is a WBE. It's a woman business entity. And WOSB, for example, is a woman-owned small business. There are a lot of acronyms, and we jokingly and lovingly say it's like an alphabet soup. But when you're going to the state or the federal government, those credentials and certifications often mean a designation that provides you with an opportunity that you may not otherwise be able to have. Looking at the tools and the requirements that are needed in those areas to compete is where our specialty is. We can help you put things together like a pitch deck or your capability statement. And I'm throwing out a lot of terms here, but let me stop for a moment and say that a capability statement is very much like a resume, and it's a concise 1 or 2 page document about the business and its competencies, and its purpose is to really provide that overview of information so that whichever government agency is looking at you and that bid process, you're going to be able to convince them or any of the other potential customers that you are capable of doing business with them and fulfilling that contract. We can also work with you in terms of putting the other collateral material together that would take that information and convert it over into whether it be your website or an e-commerce strategy or even a digital strategy. And a lot of folks think that, a digital strategy, I just have a website page and put it out there and people come to me. That's fantastic. That's wonderful when people can do that. But when doing work with the government, that marketing plan usually involves a deeper dive into targeting for those internal customers and the agency to align the specific things that they need to the specific product and service that you offer, and then making that connection. To help you better understand the general services information, there's a schedule, for example, that's put out. And we help our clients get through that process to think about what that marketing strategy is, to get through that guide and in the interactive community, which they call the Schedule for Contractor Success and Marketing Matters. So they have a whole curriculum. And in order to get to that point, we guide and help through the tools to get there. Joining that group again means that you're going to be getting some timely and relevant tips to get through that training. I'm going to pause for a second before I go on and say, Joe, would there be anything that you wanted to add to this point on anything that I've discussed?
No, I just want to answer the question. I saw a question in the chat box. It was regarding capability statements. And I think they asked, could you have more than one capability statement? The answer is actually yes. There's sometimes several businesses actually need several different capability statements. Let's take a construction business. When they could be into heavy equipment, or they could be also in the specialist of they have engineering or electrical apparatus that is pertaining to them. They could also be part of the marine division or something of that nature, aeronautics. So we think about a lot of our wind turbines off of the Long Island Sound. It's a lot of different industries that actually go into that. So depending on what type of business, product, or service you're offering to the government, I would recommend that. What's really important to really land contracts with the government, where we spend $500 billion, the US government, and 23% of that is actually set aside for small business. So small business, it really is huge business as far as it relates to the federal government of the United States. We are the #1 procurer in the world of goods and service, and that 23% is a significant amount of that. One thing that I like to talk about on the capability statement, yes, you can come to our department with that. We'll help you put that together. You can also go to one of the PTAP, which is the Procurement Technical Assistance Program, which is another quasi-governmental agency, and they help you not only to help with your capability statement like we do, they will actually help you market to the federal government. That is one of their tasks that they're tasked with. We are under the auspices of the Small Business Administration, so we work a little bit differently. We have other things that they're trying to monitor with and try to track. At PTAP, it's dealing specifically with procurement. I know in the coming days, I know here in Connecticut, there's a matchmaker event in University of Hartford. I think there's another matchmaker event the next day somewhere else. In our department, there are RFPs sent to us. Being state employees funded by the federal government, we get a lot of information. I know about the MTA contract that's out there right now on the street, the wind turbine. That's a major contract. If you look at what's happening out in New London and Groton on the base out there, electric boat, these are multi-billion-dollar contracts. They're actually building and extending out the port in New London. A Canadian company actually oversees that project. They're in 4th phase of their project. So being a client of the SBDC or interacting with government entities will actually help you in the long run. But we like to tailor whatever product or service you add. You need to list the NICS code or the CAGE code. It's very, very important. This is how the government actually tracks you. It's by industry classification or industry code. So it's very important. Another key area of how you receive a contract is by past performance. And in cases of new businesses who do not have past performance, the government has set up programs such as the Protege program, or using and encouraging joint ventureship with small businesses working together or working underneath a prime contractor. Many cases that actually happens. It's a lot of times when people want to get into the federal government, they may start locally with a local municipality. They may go through the state of Connecticut system to the Department of Administrative Services to get that certification, to get that designation, that MBE, that DBE, or whatever that they may need. When you're looking at federal government and when you're a small minority business, you really want to be 8A certified. And as you see at the very top on the prepare, You know, you need to be in business for 2 years. It is a lengthy, lengthy process. It is not something overnight. It takes you anywhere between 6 months to a year to go through that process, but that process is very, very important to you. Why do I say that? Because in the first 5 years or first 4 years of the program, your business is being encouraged to only apply to the set aside program that only 8A clients or potential contractors can work with the federal government. So you're only competing with that small pool and not the whole at large. And so when you think about that, it kind of gives you a little bit of competitive edge. So the government has set up a program to help small businesses actually grow. And in the last 4 or 5 years, they tend to wean you off of the program. One thing I like to encourage small businesses to really look, on the previous slide, they talked about the dynamic report, static report. That report actually tells you everyone who is certified with the federal government by NICS code or CASE code classification. So if you want to know your competitors, if you want to know what type of products or services the government is looking at, and you want to know who received the bid, when the bid may be up for renewal, or who you may possibly partner with, you can do a dynamic search and find all this information out. Sometimes when we want to look at joint ventures and companies come to us and say, Joe, we don't have enough capacity. We may not have enough bonding. We may pair them up with a larger contractor who actually has the bonding capacity, and they may work together. Don't be fooled that it's because you're a small company, you can't be the prime contractor. That's not true in the federal government. All right. We actually encourage that. So continue going. I hope I didn't talk too much, Denise. I just know that this is very, very important. Some things that small businesses should really look at as they tend to grow.
I'm so glad that you took that deeper dive, because I think those are critical components of what goes in here. And while we're coming at this a high level, it's nice to take that deeper dive. But I think you touched on a number of different points there that I wanted to elaborate as we move to the next slide, if we could. And that is, preparing, as Joe indicated, is taking that deeper dive. And that's really where we start looking at some of the marketing tools and strategies. What do you need to take that deeper dive? If you're going to have an industry day or some kind of pre-bid conference or an outreach day, what do you need to put together? And that's where we take that deeper dive. And as he indicated, you have to have a certain amount of industry experience. He mentioned 2 years experience. If you don't have that, sometimes there are workarounds. You might have been working, for example, as a marketing and public relations specialist for 30 years, and you decide to go out on your own as a contractor. In some cases, if you can demonstrate capacity, then you can move forward. I recently had someone who was machining parts, and they left the prior business and started one on their own, and they were able to get into the process. And as Joe indicated, there's options. One of them is the mentor protege program, and I think that works out really well. But what do you need to get there? Well, consider again your value, as I indicated earlier, to what that government agency is. Can you market to a commercial business? Well, it's going to be different to the government entity. So that step-by-step process and getting that marketing strategy together is where you begin. And what do you say to them? Well, the second thing that you want to consider is heightening your web presence. What do you look for, and how do you put forth your individual value and optimize what's happening on your website? Are you able to provide a web address on your business card and your capability statement? Yes, you should. And typical things that should be on the website aren't always top of mind when you do your website yourself. We work with a lot of folks that want to DIY because they want to save money and get there, and that's okay in many cases. But having somebody look at it to make sure that it has your contract information and your contact information. What are your core competencies and past performance? The specific corporate data, who's the contact that they should be coming to? When we start thinking about case studies or white papers, we can help you put that together. There's different templates and ways that it should be written. And then the links directly to the GSA, their e-library, the other areas that you need to walk through. Sometimes you're not or the clients aren't necessarily comfortable with navigating through different pages. We can help build that capacity to get them there, but also making sure that your website has that linkability and connectability. Joe also elaborated a lot on a capability statement, and I think that's one of the most important things. Is there's a variety of different topics that we're going to be covering in workshops as we get through the summer and in the fall. Please continue to look at our website. One of them is going to be a deeper dive on a capability statement. Clearly, core capacities and core competencies, and past performance and corporate data, contact information. So again, preparing all of those different things that need to be on there. There's generally 5 or 6 pages that you absolutely need to have on your website. And how do you link that up to social media so that government entities can find you? If we can move to the next slide.
Before we go on, I want to answer, let's take a quick break since we are close-knit group. Let's answer some of the chat. So, and I'm looking
there's
at
some in there? Okay.
there. Yeah. So
I can't see.
One question in the chat is the matchmaker event in person or Zoom? It's actually a combination this year, I do believe.
No, it's not happening this year. They've decided to combine the diversity supplier program this year. Are you talking about the Women's Business Center at University of Hartford?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is anyone on this call, when we get further information about those type of events, we will actually share that with you. This is one of the big reasons why I encourage everyone to take advantage of the free services that your tax dollars is paying for, to have individuals like myself and Denise be able to help you, because it's free to you. So you should take advantage of that. And talking about marketing, one tool that every client has access to, it's about $1,000 normally for this type of research. It's called IBIS World. Usually most universities in our country have the IBIS World system. We at SBDC here in Connecticut have purchased this system. And this actually allows you to get real-time data marketing analysis, not only from a countrywide or geographical, but it actually tells you what's trending in the industry. It's like a 37-page document. So it's very, very informative. Also, there's another question: does the government only procure products? And what about consultants? Well, I can tell you the government hires plenty of consultants around the world. What you should understand, as most small businesses, 96% of the world's products and services are brought not in the United States. Even though the government does 500 billion, a lot of that 500 billion is not residing here in Washington or other parts of our country. It's actually overseas. It's in Africa, it's in Asia, it's Malaysia, it's the Middle East, it's in Europe. We spend billions of dollars overseas, and we encourage our contractors, our companies, to want to seek those opportunities. If you are in a service business and a consultant, I would definitely go to USAID. I would go to Prosper Africa. I would go to the US Trade Desk. I would look up the Development Fund Corporation. These are all federal departments that are dealing mostly outside the United States. And when you go to these websites, you will see what the government is actually procuring for. So when we write a government, say Ghana, $400 million to the Millennium Challenge Program, we want a US company to go over there and monitor the money. But it's very difficult. Where do you find that information? Do you know to go to Biz Ops to look that up? Do you know to go to the Federal Register to look that up? Are you on the GSA schedule, or have you participated in the SAM system? See, these are qualifiers that Denise and I are really stressing to you, because there is a link in the chain that you should begin the process of wanting to work with the federal government. Even the federal government, when you go to the schedule, it asks you specific questions. Are you even ready? Do you have an accounting system in place to be able to deal with the auditing aspect that the federal government is going to mandate with you? This is not just like working from anybody and everyone. The federal government, not only know we're alphabet soup, but we love paperwork. We kill trees. All right, so you have to understand that. And with that, just be prepared. Our job is to help prepare you to be the best, to present the whatever product or service that you have that you want to sell to the government. We're here to help you to shore up the weaknesses. So we pretty much do a SWOT analysis, you know, strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. And really, we think, like, from a government standpoint, What is the strength that you bring to the table? Meaning, explain the product and service, capability statement. What is the weaknesses? Do you have bonding? Do you have the proper accounting system? Are you even ready to take on work from the federal government? And do you have a track record? Opportunities, well, there's 500 billion opportunities and 23% of that is set aside just for small business. What is the threats? The competition that has done the things that Denise and I are talking about, who are ready to do business with our government. Where are you in this equation? You have to look back, do a SWOT analysis of your firm and say, am I ready to take the next steps? And what is then missing if I don't have everything I need? And then we, myself, Denise, and the rest of the team will help you get there. Back to you, Denise.
No, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. And when we start thinking about all of the different things that we need to do to get there and thinking about the requirements, I think you hit the nail on the head. SBDC can help you through that. One of the things that Ms. Thomas has asked is, can we put in there the 3 main websites? And there's going to be more than 3, but I would say it would be the DAS, the Department of Administrative Services with Connecticut. It would also be the SBDC, so that we can guide you through not just one of them, but all of them, because we really help decipher all of the different areas that are in there. And I would think that the next one would potentially be the GSA. Then we have others like we just mentioned with PTAC. And I think that that might be a really good tool for us to provide for you, Ms. Thomas, and the folks on this call as a result, as a takeaway from today.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
I think there's a lot of resources. Lisa, in light of time, if we can move to the next slide, that would be awesome. Great. One of the things that I think I'm going to have this, we've already talked about, as Joe is indicating, is addressing the difficulties in proposals and preparations. He talked about 95% of the world's economy is outside the United States. And we do a lot of the global types of assessments. When you get ready, whether it's doing business with the government or you get ready to do your exporting, there's an assessment tool, and it looks at a number of things, a 360 view of your business. Are you operationally ready? Is your administration ready? Are the technical sides and the financial sides of your business prepared? Because no matter what comes at you, we've got to be able to help you figure out what your assessment is. So we create that baseline or that milestone, and then we measure additional milestones. But more importantly, we want to look at the puzzling process of the RFP structure and the content. What does that mean to your business? How does the analysis change once you begin to do that bidding? And then again, what if there's inconsistent information in the RFP or the information is confusing? I've had a lot of folks come to me recently and say, I only have 10 days to respond to this and my accountant's going to take all of 15 days. I'm not going to be able to get the data that they need. So we've got to be able to think about that insufficient lead time. Can there be an extension? Can we get you back in through that process at another time? One of the most important things we want to reiterate here, and Joe and I keep coming back at this, and that is making sure that you're strategic and that we plan. We always hear about X number of businesses fail every year because of lack of planning. And that's what we really want to emphasize here. The more you plan and the more you implement, our objective is to get an action plan in place, not just simply have a piece of paper that says I have a plan. But again, thinking about what those proposals mean and helping you establish experience. We've talked about a couple of times the mentor protege program. It's a wonderful way to get your feet wet on a subprime contract. And those mentors can drive a lot of that activity if you've never done procurement, and teaching you the ropes as well as the language and how to get in there to build that experience. Don't worry if you don't have 2 years of experience, because we can help you build toward that. And so can the mentor protege program. And then again, looking at the different types of tools and processes. Joe, I think you had some other comments you might want to make on this one.
I want to just go back and give them a couple of jewels. You said they wanted 3 different ones. I know you covered a couple. I want to make sure everyone knows Dan's Federal Biz Ops, which is FBO.gov. This is where all federal business opportunities are actually listed. Another website is called USAspending.gov. It is another website that you can see. Also, we do have a federal procurement data system called FFDS.gov. In order to bid on any federal contract, you must go through the GSA.gov. in order to do that. I will encourage each and every one of you. It takes Denise and I over 2 hours to put someone through. It will take you at least a week. So with that being said, you should come to the experts. And I'm telling you, it's not easy, all right? So I'm gonna be honest with you, we have trouble sometimes with it. So we encourage you to use our help. I also wanted to mention, I did mention it earlier, the dynamic small business search. If you wanted to find out, type in your cage code, type in your industry. You will see which companies the government has hired to do exactly whatever service or product you actually have. For those service businesses, those consultants, I can't stress it enough. There is more work for you outside the United States than sitting here in America. The billions of dollars, the government wants to track that. Whether it's housing, whether it's social things, whether it's healthcare, consultants is big business in the federal government. I know this personally. I have a business in Africa. I go to Africa and I go as a consultant. So I'm telling you firsthand, that's real business. The websites I gave you are some of the people that have given out these contracts. They're the ones in charge of them. USAID does a lot around the world. I can't stress it enough. You can actually solicit as a business to these federal departments. A lot of businesses don't know that, but they actually can, and it's encouraged. So Denise, I love what you talked about on the pursuit of things. You know, failure to plan is one key area. That's what really destroys a lot of small businesses from getting off the ground, is the lack of preparation. That's why we kind of stress it. Having the right tools in place and processes. It's the government is big on that. They make a lot of decisions based on that, and participate in the RFP process. One thing I like about the Fed Biz Ops, every time they do an addendum to an RFP, this is where it's listed. It's either there or they print it in the Federal Register. That is where you find updated information when it comes down to federal work. When it comes to the state of Connecticut, the Department of Administrative Services and Meg and her team under supply diversity, once you go and go through the supplier diversity portal at the state of Connecticut through DAS, you will then get to choose by NAICS code what bid solicitations you want the state of Connecticut to send you. And they will automatically send you that. But you have to register for that, and you have to choose which categories you actually want. So that is very, very important to get.
I would say, in addition to what we're discussing here, and I think this is really going to be a list of things that we can provide at some point, and that would be some of the top websites for procurement blogs or research sites, because sometimes it does involve research. And then again, I would say the different procurement sites. Joe, we've been rattling them off, and these are phenomenal resources, but there's a lot of information there. We can share that with them. Absolutely. But it's good. Can we move to the next slide, Lisa? Because I think we're almost done here.
Yeah.
And I think when we start thinking about how to get to a winning proposal and pursuing the contract, any phase or portion of your contract, we think about how to develop what's acceptable, as Joe indicated, in an accounting system. We've already talked about that. And making sure that you understand that when you do procurement with the government, in some cases, whether it be education or energy or healthcare or any of the things that we've talked about, you want to make sure that you understand from time to time, they may want some type of audit or report or modifications made to those contracts if it's going to be renewed and move forward. And so some of the deliverables that we want to analyze there, again, we've listed them in terms of a fixed price or cost reimbursements and so on. Joe, did you have something to comment on that one?
No, I think you covered that one pretty well. I think the biggest thing is to understand to have systems. Right. Financial systems is very important. It's very critical. And to be honest with you, I've seen it happen, and I would not want to happen to anyone. By having not the proper paperwork that is required by the administrators of your contract, you could actually lose your federal contract. So they really push the accounting system. They ask you upfront, what type of system do you have and what kind of financial controls are you using? They want to know, are your books audited or unaudited? It depends on the size of the contract with the federal government of how detailed it must really be. Okay?
Excellent. Lisa, can we move to the next slide? Joe, I think this is all you. I'll add in for you this time.
Thank you. Well, I think I talked about this already. Federal grants. Oh, grants.gov. Grants.gov. Everyone talks about when they call up, hey, is any grants? Is any grants? You know, under this pandemic, there were several. You know, we had the stimulus, we had the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. We had the RRF, which is the restaurant renewal fund. We had the shuttered venues, which is for theaters and stuff like the Schubert and things of that nature, and the Palace and other things for performers in the arts to help them, the movie theaters. That was specifically for them. We had the EIDL, the Advanced Loan Fund that was provided. And then there was a supplemental, another additional 5,000 added for those businesses that were in certain parts or certain areas of distressed areas of our country to give them added benefit. And so, but when you look at overall general grants, this is where you have to go. This is the Mecca. You have to go to grants.gov. So if you know any grant that has a potential coming out, that is out, this is where you're going to find it. Now, we at the local level, at the state level, we would know, usually the Department of Economic and Community Development under the governor's office would handle any grant possibilities of coming out there. There's other departments called like Connecticut Innovations. If you are running an innovating type of companies, you know, medical devices, the healthcare field, bioscience, there is room in the state of Connecticut for you as well. Also, just recently, the government of Connecticut, the state of Connecticut received $6 billion, $5 billion has been allocated, I'm quite sure. State representatives can tell you more about this, but where did all the money go? We know in our department, 400 million will probably directly affect us because it's dealing with small business. You know, $143 million is just on workforce development and job training. Another $150 million, 25 million is going to go to Connecticut Innovations. They're going to send an RFP probably next month for CDFIs to actually compete, bid through an RFP process to oversee the government's money. Once again, here's a pool of money going out to bid for a service. Big business. Small business is big business to us in the government. Denise?
And so if you're not bursting at the seams yet over those, I've got a few more that I want to share with you too. And I think that when I look at what we've talked about, there's a number of things. If you're doing something in the science and technology area, there's SBIR and STTR, and these are for research and innovation and technology transfer. And again, you may be able to qualify for some of those grants as well. There's usually a preliminary round, and that round is usually up to 150,000. And then once you get that product out of pre-venture phase and you move it forward, you can get millions of dollars in that area. The other area that Joe and I were talking about was exporting. And if you have a product that you're exporting, and you want to be able to do some type of marketing or public relations, let's say it's globalize your website or create collateral material and translation services. The STEP grant, it's the State Trade Expansion Program. It's administered from the SBA and it's overseen and distributed through the DECD. In addition to that, if you're manufacturing, our Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology, also known as CCAT, has two different innovation funds. One of them is called the Manufacturers Innovation Voucher Program. And so if you have a project up to $50,000 and you need machinery or equipment and you need to bring in different types of consultants to help you turn your business around, it's a matching grant. You put up 50% and CCAT puts up 50%. They have a second one that's called the Integration Voucher Program. It's really revolving around the IoT or the Internet of Things. So if you're putting any kind of big data or analytics, or you're doing additive manufacturing or automation, there's a grant voucher.
All right, what is the difference between
sorry about that, up to $20,000. It's a matching grant. And again, if you're putting in different types of technology into your business, you can get that grant and move that forward. And the last thing that I want to talk about is if you have struggled in the past year and your sales have declined by 10, 20%. There is an organization in Western Mass called NETAC, the New England Trade Assistance Center. And you can get grants, again, up to $30,000 to do a variety of things in turning your business around, getting counseling and advising to run a little bit leaner, maybe hiring folks, or again, doing marketing. So we're bursting you at the seams. I think what we wanted to portray is there's a lot of help out there. There's a lot of partners. The SBDC works nicely in the sandbox with a lot of them, but we wanted to give you a flavor for what it is that we're providing here. And I think that was all I had to say. But if we want to move to the next slide, I don't know if there's another one there for you, Joe.
What is SBDC? We've been talking about this. Well, the SBDC, it's been around for over 40 years. We're actually celebrating our 40th year here in Connecticut. It's a collaboration between the Small Business Administration, the Department of Economic and Community Development, and it's housed at the University of Connecticut School of Business. By the direction of our governor. That's who decides where it goes, but their funding sources are the SBA and DECD. Next slide, please. What do we provide? Our business advising services, financial analysis and cash flow. I do a lot of this in my team, praying for capital access. We are required to help around $57 million a year to move in small business through debt and equity capital. So this is myself and the 20 so advisors. That is what we do. That's one of our goals that the SBA has us doing. We talked about the market research, and our market research tool is IBIS World. We also deal with tools such as SRE, which deals with demographic, social graphic, things of that nature. So you can either go to the U.S. Census Bureau, but we like SRE reports because I like to know data. Hey, I want to know who has a median income of $250,000 in a 2-mile radius of where I'm standing, and to have children of 3 children and a dog. Well, the SBE report will tell me exactly that. And so that's a wonderful tool when I'm moving my business or product or service and I need deep dive information. I turn to that tool for that information. Marketing, social media, a lot of marketing, social media. Denise's team, she's on the customer acquisition. They get involved in a lot of that exclusively. Budget preparation and forecasting. We have a whole nother team of experts that they just deal with that budgeting and forecasting. We've talked a lot about government contracting, and you see there's definitely expertise around the table, as well as export consulting as well. Startup assistance. We help over 165 startups every single year start their business. We surpassed that number, and we're really on target during the pandemic. You wouldn't be surprised that how many people have made that pivot during the pandemic to start their own business, and right up to the date, we're at 165. Business disruption and planning. This is a disruption no one thought about. Since the swine flu, we have not seen anything like this. So think about it. We think hurricanes, tornadoes, but no one thinks about, hey, being away for 16 to 18 months from your job. I've been in my office since March 16, 2019, but I'm still here. So loan structure and refinancing, something my team and I, we deal in heavily dealing with the capital access and being the team lead. If you need $1, well, guess what? I'm going to get it for you some way, somehow. SBIR, STTR assistant, Denise really touched on that. That is where the government takes 3% of our overall GDP budget, and we set aside and we put it in SBIR, STTR. We want to know what products are out there that are the U.S. citizens, or our government can have a strategic advantage of other countries and other nations. This is the R&D money they actually use in the 11 departments that oversee that. And then we get involved in business valuations and succession planning. 50% of all companies in the United States do not translate to the next generation. And of that 50%, 75 do not go to the 3rd generation. So succession planning is a big deal. I was on a phone call yesterday with the Deputy Commissioner of DECD and a few others. I'm on the phone talking to a gentleman who wants to sell his business to a minority small business. He's done a wonderful job, built it to about $1.5 million, employs 9 people. He wants to retire, but he says, I want to give it over here. So part of our job is to help locate individuals who would look to want to acquire that type of business. Once again, another service that the SBDC provides for you. Next slide, please. I do believe this is our contact information. Contact information, CTSBDC, UConn.edu. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just please reach out to us. Denise, I think the last slide is a great picture of Denise and myself. Is that the last slide?
That's it. We took them out.
I guess because we get to see you on screen already.
I guess so.
Thank you both for that. As I suspected, I told Max and Brittany, who I also want to thank for helping to put this together. I'm like, we need 2 to 3 hours. I feel excited and overwhelmed, but such good information. We'll open it up for a quick Q&A. And I have one question that people have asked me in the past, and I've thought of it myself. So I qualify as a minority-owned business, a woman business entity, a woman-owned business, a small business. I check a lot of boxes. If you're applying for one designation, is it easy to sort of gang it up and do all of them, or is every process very different and you should invest in one bucket?
Well, the SBE, which is small business entity, and the minority business entity for the state, you can do those at the same time. And the WOSB is a federal one, and that generally has to be done through a third party so that you get your certificate. But what we've been advising our clients to do, particularly women who are minority owned, is do them all at once, because that enables you to do the bid process across all lines at the same time. So there's no restriction. I've had folks that are also veterans. Those credentials do help you on the set aside dollars, but it's a certification that gets you that recognition and your qualifications reviewed. So yes, it's not one or the other. It can be all of them.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Feel free to unmute. And if not, I have others. Looks like Jennifer, you're trying to unmute. Nod your head if so. There
Hi,
you go.
Thanks for having me. I am so overwhelmed. This is like really, I've been trying this since 2012 and it's been an awful experience. And I tried back last year during the pandemic and I fell in love with the SBA. They had a lot of webinars and they gave us a lot of information. And that's how I was able to create my capability statement and things like that. But overall, everything else I've tried, I'm not impressed. But today I'm over the top. I have a lot of information and I honestly believe that everybody in this panel is sincere enough that it's going to follow through. I have not seen that in the other programs that I have looked at, except for the SBA. Very impressed with that program.
Well, thank you for saying that. And I know there was some chat going back and forth and you have the email address, so definitely be in touch. Yes. I have found the SBDC's expertise to be wonderful. I thought, Marcy, you asked a good question that I'm always plagued with as a fundraising consultant. Right. But, it's interesting because the first time I thought of this, it was because one of the Smithsonians wanted to hire me for fundraising, and they participate in all of these programs. And I think, Joe, you alluded to like colleges, universities. Are there other type of contractors that we're not thinking about just to get our brain flowing to evaluate if this is worthwhile? I always think, defense contractors and, these big mega businesses and not smaller consulting services like PR, you mentioned, Denise. Can you help us wrap our head around like the types of quasi agencies, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, let's think about it from this vantage point. The federal government requires pencils, pens, toilet paper. They pay for the lights. They ask for consultants to come in and say, audit us internally. So that's what a lot of consultants, they hire attorneys to oversee other different aspects. Everything you see outside of government, the government's already buying. And so when you are a small business, you just have to just be able to say, I need to be certified, to be qualified to participate in that world. And that world has rules to it. Our job is to show you the rules so you can play effectively in the game. So it's like Jennifer, she's been trying to play in the space, but she doesn't know the rules. Mm-hmm. Our department showed you the rules, but we also hold your hand and lead you down that road. You know what I mean? We tap you into PTAP, Procurement Technical Assistance Program. We know, hey, this is a consultant, wants to do X, Y, and Z. Here's their cage code number or the industry classification they're in. What's available right now? And what is the government buying right now? So not only do you know the future, you know the present, and you know the past.
I'd like to add something to that too. And that is, I saw in the chat as I skimmed through it just now that there is a slight difference, as Joe's indicating. But when you're selling a product or goods to the government, there's a uniform commercial code, and they want to make sure that they're getting a decision that's made on fair and transparent and good value. So sometimes we look at phrases like going with the lowest bid. And so when you look at that, the terms of the contract are determined by, what that product is and what they're willing to pay. So the government can cancel that contract when they choose to and move to another contractor. When you're selling a service, there's delivery costs, there's a variety of other things that a contractor is willing to fulfill in terms of the contract. But there's an invested amount of time and money and effort that goes into it. And when we start looking at that, the provisions of that contract can be modified at any time. And that modification would mean change in the structure of the fees and so on. So contracting services changes more rapidly or is able to be changed more rapidly than a product. Usually the contract with the product stays there. And I think that question was asked a little bit earlier. So I hope whoever asked that question, this helps you a little bit more. Speak up if it didn't.
So I asked the question about goods versus services in government contracts. And like Stephanie, I'm a nonprofit consultant. Stephanie does fundraising. I happen not to do fundraising. I know this is getting a little granular, but it's just to be an example. So I do a lot of retreat work. I do research. I do governance work, all of that for nonprofit organizations. My question is, as a women small-owned business, which I am, not certified yet, is the certification valuable? Because would there even be work for this kind of service? Mm-hmm. And have you actually helped businesses like mine or Stephanie's get certified in this process? And has work come to those businesses? Thank you.
It has, and it generally comes through educational institutions or, like you said, in camps and so on. The other differentiator for you is when you're a contractor, not only on the audit, but you don't have to supply the same kinds of records. With a product, it's going to be different. You need to do the audit. And with services, yes, there's no mandate for the contractor to be audited. So it's kind of nice when you are, a contractor. So depending on what the services are, again, it could be schools, it could be daycare centers that are operated by either a municipal, state, or federal entity. There could be a lot of areas. I'd like to be able to take that offline with you and take that deeper dive. We can show you how the main services play. When you select, for example, at DAS, you select your contracting. It has a drop-down box of a series of types of contracting. When you select that, the drop-downs continue to go. It's much more user-friendly and it's much more detailed.
Yes, I will follow up with you on that. Thank you.
Let me give you an example, because I understand there's two people that I have a philanthropic background. I worked at the American Heart Association as an executive, and then I worked at the Urban League as an executive, raising money. And then transition to consulting. When you look at NGOs, that is the world the government plays in. When it comes down to nonprofit, philanthropic, wanting to make change, because you're dealing with services. They may deal with some goods, but a lot of it is dealing with services, especially around things of health, children, women entrepreneurship, things around green energy. If you were to ever go to the 17 sustainability aspects that the UN has classified for the world, America participates in that. America spends its money around the world to fulfill those needs. A lot of those needs are not just in the physical sense of a product. A lot of it has to do with intellectual property of intelligence and services, which a lot of third world countries, unfortunately, are lacking, but we bring to the table and the government funds. That makes sense? Hope that helped you. That just gives you the idea of the magnitude that you actually have, that you can, don't think small. I tell my clients all the time, we shoot for the sun, we land on the star, but we're no longer on Earth. That's how you think. Sure.
Speaking of government, and you're reminding me that everything is a system, and sometimes when you're outside the system, it becomes very difficult to find out these things. So let's bring it back to Connecticut. I sit in Hartford. We passed a lot of great legislation for businesses this session. As you alluded to, we have a lot of federal stimulus money coming through Connecticut Innovations, you know, DECD, et cetera. Is there an easy way to know, because people ask me like, oh, you passed that bill, when will these dollars for manufacturing be freed up? And I have no idea because that will be taken care of by someone else. So how can people stay in the loop about some of this grant funding in particular, or matching grants, et cetera, in Connecticut?
Well, one big thing is our newsletter that we send out.
How do we get on it?
I was going to say, you basically now have half a dozen people you will not be able to shake.
Well, that's good. I mean, to be honest with you, when we look at our clients, and we serve on the average of 22 to 2,400 clients a year on our department, we send correspondence. So when SBA sends us information, or the state is sending us information, we're kind of the clearinghouse, if you will. We are your consultant. So we want to keep you abreast. We are very concerned with your return on your investment, your ROI. And so it's our job not only to start you in business, but to help you grow your business. We're happy to talk about the aspect of procurement today, but we look at the overall business and really assess and have strategic sessions with our clients that really help you along.
I would say that, Joe, you summarized that great. And I put the link to our website, it's ctsbd.uconn.edu. You can sign up for the website right on our page. Sign up for the newsletter right on our page. That strategy comes across in a number of tools and ongoing private one-on-one advising. And don't hesitate to go in there, because we have recorded sessions like this one and other types of webinars, teaching aids and tools in there too.
Well, I just noticed we are over time, and that says how fascinating you are, because I could easily go for another 30 minutes. But I so appreciate you joining me for this. I definitely, it sounds like everyone on this call will be in touch. So thank you for providing those resources. I'm sort of speechless and overwhelmed, because this sounds like such an amazing opportunity, and I stand by. I'm happy to share this information in my district, or to other small businesses, because I think this type of resource is so sorely needed. Again, a really special thank you to Brittany and Max, without whom this would have never happened. Thank you for all the emails and all the communications. And thank you everyone for joining. Any last words, Joe and Denise?
Thanks so much for the opportunity. It's delightful to see it and meet everybody today. Look forward to hearing from you soon.
Yeah, ditto. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.